everybody. It's wonderful to meet those of you that I've chatted with on the phone and been emailing with. I'm Amanda Greco. It's been my pleasure to work on behalf of PMP in engaging the alumni community for this event that's happening on October 20th. I think I've told you all on the phone or in some capacity that the day is starting off with Class Notes Live. So, you know, your conversations, your talks, and the stories that you share are going to really set the tone for the day. And the idea is that, you know, instead of having everyone just show up and have to be on a kind of one-way receiving end of conversations, by hearing the stories that you put out there, it will open up conversations and, you know, kind of start little trails of ideas that people will follow up with you about and really kind of build on as the day progresses. So thank you for taking the time to put a lot of thought into your idea and for being here today to work with JD, who I'm pleased to introduce. JD is the director of our Mastery in Communication Initiative. You can talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And he's also a lecturer here in organizational behavior. And if you wouldn't mind, it would be great to just go around the table, introduce yourself, share your name, the year you graduated, and kind of what compelled you to want to talk for Class Notes Live, keeping it brief so that we have an idea of, you know, why you're here.
I'm Ernie Ting. I'm from the class of 1980. I have an interest in public management and particularly how it relates to public sector government. So I was interested in sharing that perspective.
Jack May, class of 84, and my wife and I a few years ago set up a nonprofit that's got more traction. And my wife said somebody has to tell the story, and she very nicely pushed me forward. And so this opportunity came up, and so it was an opportunity to try that.
I'm Martha Weeks, and I'm actually a communications coach here at the GSB. Several of us are here today. We work for JD, and we were doing just writing coaching, and now we're getting more into speech coaching, and so JD invited us to come to the session tonight, and I'm just learning right now what it's all about, so thanks for letting us be here.
I'm Val Carpenter. I'm currently serving on the Los Altos City Council as Mayor Pro Tem, and I'm here as I was a class of 82 at business school, and I'm here to hopefully inspire people to serve their local communities with public service.
I'm Mary Wang. I'm with Mastery in Communication Initiative, and I'm a lecturer here at the PSB as well.
I'm Jenny Schoenstein, class of 99. I'm here because I believe about 10 years ago co-founded a foundation called the Drake Richards Kaplan Foundation, which focuses on new ventures, new nonprofit ventures that we think have tremendous promise. And we fund them and work with them over the early parts of their life.
Diego Fawcett, class of 03. I started a nonprofit in math and science earlier this year, and I wanted to come and talk about it and get feedback and excite the community.
I'm Alice LaPlante, class of 90, been across the street as a sticker fellow. And I'm also a communications coach with Martha and Mary.
My name is Uri Pomerantz. I'm class of 2008. I'm in the process of starting a company. Basically, ING Direct meets Kiva, so you can do good with your bank.
I'm Ashley Bourne. I'm a class of 89. I'm executive director of a nonprofit environmental group called Sustainable Conservation, and I'm here to improve my communication skills and in preparation for the CMU anniversary.
I'm Margarita Kishimoto. I was mayor of Palo Alto and I was city council for 8 years, currently on the open space district. And my call to action as mayor was to build a green economy innovation, so to combine both environment and economics.
Well, I'll ask a question. How many of you are involved with taking care of your parents or loved ones? I'm here to talk about the aging population and caregiving and taking care of yourself and taking care of your parents.
What's your name?
Carolyn Out, class of 83.
I'm Carol Sisk, and I work for the Office of Development across the way. And so I'm an interloper to hear about this program and learn some more.
I'm Bruce Baker, class of 55, that's 1955. And I'm pleased to serve on the community resource group for the Stanford General Use Permit, which has been an exciting 2 decades that Rika knows a lot about, and continues to be an exciting venture.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. Oh, yes. Two in the back.
Sorry, I'm Jenna Abel, and I'm another one of the communication coaches, so thank you for letting me sit down.
And I'm Teresa Johnston. I'm a writer for Student Business Magazine.
So thank you very much for all being here. I will turn the evening over to JD, and thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. When I first met Caroline, she was one of my CAT students. CAT is the Critical Analytical Thinking course here at the GSB that all first-year students are now required to take. So she was one of 16 students, about the group that were gathered here, who was in one of my seminars in critical and analytical thinking. And the way I first got to know Caroline is she cited Stan Delaney in her paper and said, personal conversation with Stan Delaney, Morgan Stanley vice president, and his GSB graduating year. Well, I know Stan. I was like, why is she citing somebody that I know in her CAT paper? She's probably figuring out a way to get on my good side. The first time I met her sister, Katha, was in the Upper Arbuckle on the other campus. And as you know, people run quickly through Upper Arbuckle because it's not a place you spend a lot of time. And as I ran through, I saw this familiar student. I said, hey, Caroline, how are you? And she goes, no, I'm not Caroline. I was like, I'm sorry? Aren't you in my CAT class? She goes, that's my twin sister. I didn't know that we had both Caroline and Katha in last year's first-year class. They're now rising second years. And the first time I got to know Monica was when Monica sent me an email last March. And she said, Professor Schramm, I've not had you in any classes yet, but 2 friends, Caroline, Katha, and I, have started our own venture. And we have a real opportunity to talk about our venture at the TEDx conference that Stanford's hosting in May, but we need some help. Would you meet us and coach us? And that began my relationship with Caroline, Katha, and Monica, who have founded an organization called Farm to Cup. And their goal is to be the direct, to eliminate the intermediaries and get rich, wonderful coffee directly from Guatemalan farms into your cup in a very efficient, effective, and inspiring way. Now, I worked with the 3 of them for several different sessions, and in those sessions we figured out the story that they were going to tell. We figured out what details to include and not, how many of them should speak when they did their short 3-minute speech at the TEDx event, and had them all ready for their audition. They did their video, and they sent their video off to TEDx so that they could be a part of the TEDx event here at Stanford. And they were turned down. They weren't chosen to be a part of that. And I was disappointed. They were extremely disappointed. They did get to present their coffee and serve their coffee, but they didn't get a moment on the stage to talk about Farm to Cup. But in August, I got an email from Katha letting me know that the next morning I should turn on NBC News early in the day because they were talking about Farm to Cup on the morning news show, using the coaching that I had given them to get ready for the event that they never got to speak at. Right now, as we speak, the 3 of them are in Guatemala, putting together more relationships so that they can show up next week, start their second year as MBA students, and continue pursuing their business ventures. And they're just one of many examples of the privilege that I get to work with MBA students here at the GSB. So when Amanda said, would you come in and work with alumni to help them tell their stories more effectively, it took me about a quarter of a second to say, you bet. I would love to have that chance to do that. So what we're going to do tonight is not presentation skills 101. First of all, as I listen to the introductions, I don't think it's necessary. And secondly, if that is something you have a need or a concern for, I've got some resources that I will point you to. We're going to actually do the advanced level. We're going to do the second-year elective instead of the first-year required class, and we're going to look specifically at storytelling and it's concise storytelling. How do I tell the story of my cause, my venture, my startup in a very short amount of time that causes an impact for the audience that I'm trying to serve? The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to talk for a little bit. I've come up with no real apologies to Stephen Covey, 7 habits of highly concise storytellers, and I will give you what those habits are. You'll also quickly know that I love teaching with video, and I particularly think all of the video clips I plan to show tonight are from TED. Is anybody unfamiliar with TED? Anybody not know? Alice is not familiar with TED? Okay, TED is an amazing website. I'm going to give you a handout in a minute that gives you a way to start on there. TED.com is a great website for seeing presentations. None of them are more than 18 minutes long, but what people don't know is that they have a special section on their website that's presentations under 6 minutes. And I'm going to use some of those clips so that you can really see some examples of concise, powerful storytellers. TED is a conference that stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And I love to just entertain myself by watching TED Talks. My husband wanted me to clean the garage yesterday because we were having friends over last night. I was like, clean the garage? That's the job I get? And so I took my laptop down to the garage and I turned on TED.com and I was, putting stuff away and moving the bikes and sweeping, but I had TED Talks going in the background. So I'm a geek, but I'm a fan of TED. And I will, before you leave, I'm going to not use any slides tonight. I'm going to write a little bit on the board. We're going to have a conversation. But I will give you one handout that has some links from TED and some links from other places here at the GSB that I hope will help you in preparing your story. Also have 1, possibly 2 volunteers who are far enough along in their prep for the 40th anniversary event that in the second half of our time together, they're actually going to come up and do part of their story, and I'm going to coach them in front of you, and we'll see what we can do to make their stories more concise and stronger. And then we'll also figure out a way that we're offering coaching for alumni as they prepare for the event on October 20th. Is it the 20th? And we'll figure out how to make sure that you know that that's available to you. We are taping tonight because some people weren't able to be here. So if you do speak up, feel free, but know that you'll be captured on audio and that it'll be made available to other alumni who are preparing for the same thing that you're preparing for. So with that said, let's move into the conversation. And it's interesting that we're looking at concise storytelling. Friday afternoon, I got to spend 2 or 3 hours at Oracle, and I was invited there they have somebody whose job title is head writer for corporate cinema at Oracle. Like, how cool of a job is that? I hear head writer, I think of the Alan Brady Show and Dick Van Dyke. And what he does is he writes all of the scripts for all of the corporate video that Oracle does to communicate to their clients and users about the products. Nothing more than 2 minutes long. Highly technical, a great deal of technical information, but all in 2 minutes or less. Now, he will do a series, kind of like a serial, where there will be different parts to it, but they don't put a 20-minute video up online. They'll put 10 2-minute videos up, and they actually can track their effectiveness by how people click through. And so the whole idea, as attention spans get shorter, as competing things on our computer are coming at us, shorter is better. And so looking at concision, I think, is a good place for us to start. Let's start with one example from TED. For people who are watching on the video, we will also be providing to you all of the links for the videos that I show here, with one exception of one that is only available for the people who are here in the room tonight. And you can watch them there, and everybody, you'll get this as a handout as well. And so we'll start with the first one, and let me get this up. And we'll go to Mark Betzos. As you watch this, see what works and what you could do differently to make this stronger.
I am the head of development for a nonprofit called Robin Hood. When I'm not fighting poverty, I'm fighting fires as the assistant captain of a volunteer fire company. Now, in our town, where the volunteers supplement a highly skilled career staff, you have to get to the fire scene pretty early to get in on any action. I remember my first fire I was the second volunteer on the scene, so there was a pretty good chance I was going to get in. But still, it was a real foot race against the other volunteers to get to the captain in charge to find out what our assignments would be. When I found the captain, he was having a very engaging conversation with the homeowner, who was surely having one of the worst days of her life. Here it was, the middle of the night. She was standing outside in the pouring rain, under an umbrella, in her pajamas, barefoot, while her house was in flames. The other volunteer who had arrived just before me, let's call him Lex Luthor, got to the captain first and was asked to go inside and save the homeowner's dog. The dog! Oh, I was stunned with jealousy. Here was some lawyer or money manager who for the rest of his life gets to tell people that he went into a burning building to save a living creature. Just because he beat me by 5 seconds. Well, I was next. The captain waved me over, said, Bezos, I need you to go into the house. I need you to go upstairs, past the fire, and I need you to get this woman a pair of shoes. I swear. So, not exactly what I was hoping for, but off I went. Up the stairs, down the hall, past the real firefighters, who were pretty much done putting out the fire at this point, into the master bedroom to get a pair of shoes. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm no hero. I carried my payload back downstairs where I met my nemesis and the precious dog by the front door. We took our treasures outside to the homeowner where, not surprisingly, his received much more attention than did mine. A few weeks later, the department received a letter from the homeowner thanking us for the valiant effort displayed in saving her home. The act of kindness she noted above all others, someone had even gotten her a pair of shoes. You know, in both my vocation at Robin Hood and my avocation as a volunteer firefighter, I am witness to acts of generosity and kindness on a monumental scale. But I'm also witness to acts of grace and courage on an individual basis. And you know what I've learned? They all matter. So as I look around this room at people who either have achieved or are on their way to achieving remarkable levels of success, I would offer this reminder. Don't wait. Don't wait until you make your first million to make a difference in somebody's life. If you have something to give it now. Serve food at a soup kitchen, clean up a neighborhood park, be a mentor. Not every day is going to offer us a chance to save somebody's life, but every day offers us an opportunity to affect one. So get in the game. Save the shoes. Thank you.
So, what worked about Mark Bezos' story? What was effective about that? And it wasn't even 4 minutes. I think it was 3:45. Yuri? You haven't been cold called in years. That's why I let Bruce off the hook on this one.
No, it's very concrete, so I wasn't really so paying attention to the story. More of like, I actually see the visuals, the shoe, I can imagine him there, having that conversation. So it sort of grabbed you in with a very concrete story that walked you through the entire thing. So it was very effective in that sense.
Yeah, and details like the shoes, the master bedroom, the real firefighters, all of those little details, just enough that you were inside the story, that you could see it. Okay. What else worked, Bruce?
Well, I like his somewhat self-deprecating style. The style I try to emulate.
Yeah, and the safest humor we can ever use in presentations, particularly in storytelling, is self-deprecating humor. When I do humor that puts somebody else down, either somebody in the audience or somebody who's not present and I make fun of, there's a risk in that. When I make fun of myself, it's usually fairly safe. I don't want to diminish myself, but it's safe. What else worked about that? Yes, it's Ernie, right?
Ernie, right. I don't know how generalizable this was, but in his case, having firefighters here on was grabbed your attention.
Yeah.
Right? And he used it as a prop as well.
Yeah, the use of the prop, and then when he pulled the jacket aside,
yeah.
held the helmet, I was like, oh man, I can't do that with a laser pointer. My props just aren't as cool. Okay, But the thing was, the whole moment you were captivated from the minute he began. Not appropriate for every presentation that you do, but it worked well there. Yes?
You were also said to expect a really amazing hero moment, when in fact the irony all the way through, and then the hero moment was in the simple thing. So you're on tension all the time waiting for this amazing story, and all of a sudden this is an amazing simple story.
Yeah, the unexpected. And I think we provided the Chip Heath excerpt from Chip Heath's book, Made to Stick, and in his success matrix, the U stands for unexpected. You know, you were expecting something huge, and it's a pair of shoes. Okay. Yes, and I'm struggling with the first name. Ashley.
I liked how the closing thought of "save the shoes," that sort of tagline that you left with. I thought that was a great way to drive it all home.
Yeah, and easy to remember, and tied to his direct message.
Right.
And your hand was also up?
Yeah, it was a situation where I felt like I wouldn't want to be in that situation, and especially with the animal.
Yeah.
Your pet is always, you want to feel like you're caring for your pet.
Yeah. So particularly for people who are pet people, there was an emotional tie to it that you're thinking, that would be awful. Or those who've experienced. My sister-in-law, she and her family just went through a house fire last weekend. So as I was watching this clip, getting ready for tonight, I was like, can I do this? I'm thinking of Kathleen and Joey and, And so there is that touch there, but it's a touch point that brings us to our audience. Yes, and I didn't catch your first name.
Yoriko.
Yoriko.
So he, I don't know if he flattered his audience, he connected to his audience, he said, are you smart, rich people,
Yeah, complimented them. It
Yes.
made him closer, made him more connected to them.
Right.
Okay, very good. Do you think all of you can do what you just saw him do when you do your speech on October 20th?
Sure.
I do. I was expecting a little more GSB sort of, but the beautiful thing about communication is it is part art and part science. The part that's art, there are some people who have gifts that not everyone has, okay? Take it away from presentations and look at basketball. Somebody who is 6'5" is automatically, just by his height, going to be better at basketball than somebody who is 4'8". So sometimes there are natural differences. That's the art. There's also the science, which means there's strategies we can learn. There's tips and checklists and things that each of us can employ that work for us. And everything we do inside of this, I want you to filter through what works for you. Because it has to be authentic for you. For you to do just like Mark Betzos just did, it would look a little phony. But if we can find your authentic style and what is appropriate for you, that's what we want to shoot for. Yes, Diego?
Yes. So one concern is I see that I think I have a slightly more complex message I'm trying to communicate than his, and so it's a great story. It's an incredibly simple message, and so you look at it like, okay, where's the tipping point of how much can you cram into that time frame and still get that moment? And so it'll be fun to explore that. But I mean, it was a very simple message from his story.
Can you make yourself? Yeah.
It
Because
could.
in 4 minutes, it probably has to be pretty simple.
Yeah. Definitely, I think that this was easier to fit in to that. And I think that we often, Chip Heath talks about the curse of knowledge. We know so much about our idea and so much about our startup. So somebody asks us what time it is, and we tell them how to build a clock. It's like, no, what is the piece that is at the core, that is necessary? So we can work on that a little bit. And I would encourage you, spend some time, either on TED or other places, looking at people who have similar stories to your own, that are complicated, but that they simplify down. Martha?
What would you advise him to do better? I thought he was pretty good.
I'm not sure. I thought he was pretty good myself. There were a few places where he could have done a little more detail, like slightly more. I think there was some humor moments lost. Had he mentioned, and I'm going to mispronounce it, Manola Blancs?
Oh, yeah.
The actual brand, like there would have been a little, had he given us the name of the dog, a few places like that. And I think he could have near the end, maybe soften the tone to where the tone actually let his meaning come through more, less of a theatrical performance and more of a moment there. But I think this is very sharp. Did you have a thought? Yes.
I just thought he could have created a more sympathy for the woman. I mean, right, the whole point is that he said she's having the worst day of her life, but the fact that the thing he did, which he thought was sort of silly, he wanted a big grand gesture, and he did something that he thought was silly, and that it made her day. It could have been more ta-da. And the letter she wrote, he could have actually read it, you know. The extraordinary efforts of it. Like, he sort of like glossed over that really quickly, but there was a whole lot of detail about other things, about how he feels. So I don't know. I would have
agreed. I would say that he could have made the woman at the heart of it more palpable.
More than himself.
Right, exactly. That she could have been the focus, because he was the focus of that. And you didn't know her name, you didn't know, she was an anonymous letter writer.
The firemen are swirling around her, and they're helping her this, and they're putting the blankets over her, and
then Jennifer wrote me a letter.
Right, and he doesn't even know that she's noticing him, right? And then, but when it comes down to it, she did notice.
Good points. I'm going to put the screen up for a minute here, and I have, as I mentioned earlier, I want to keep the conversation going, but I also want to give us a little bit of framework to look at here. I chose not to do PowerPoint slides. I feel like sometimes we kind of have death by PowerPoint. Bullet slide after bullet slide after bullet slide. So I can certainly send these 7 points out by email. I'm glad to share the notes that I worked from. But feel free to write these down as well if that helps you in your memory. These are what I'm going to call the 7 habits of concise storytellers. The first one, parachute in. There's a great book which I will mention later. Actually, I'm going to share feel free to glance at this as I speak, called Leadership Presence. We brought the folks in from the Ariel group who created this. It's great strategies around how do I, as a leader, present myself? How do I create a stage presence as a leader? And one of the things that they talk about in there is start the story in the middle. Many times we feel like we've got to do a lot of prefacing. I've got to give you all this background. I've got to give you all this information. And really, if we can figure out a way to start in the middle and then let people catch up to us. Okay? So to parachute in with very little prefacing. When Amanda and I were planning the session and we were deciding how we wanted to begin, I said, you know what, Amanda, I'd rather you do the introductions and that you do that whole conversation so that I can actually start with the story and I can start, right in with the story without any prefacing. I think even with the story I told about Caroline, Katha, and Monica, I could have started more in the middle, but I wanted to have a linear progression. So think about your story for the 20th. How do I parachute in? How do I not give too much background? 4 minutes goes fast. If you spend a minute and a half or 2 minutes in background, you've lost that opportunity. Second is select your first words carefully. I would also add final words. What were his final words?
Save the shoes.
Save the shoes.
That's right.
The coaches who were in the room, we watched a video last week together. I think we watched it together. The congressman, do you remember his final words? 2 words. Get writing. It's a short TED talk about how to write to your elected officials. And he ended with get writing. So thinking about the last word. What were my first words tonight?
First met.
Say again, Diego?
I first met.
Yeah, I first met Caroline in my CAP course. I could have begun with lots of things, but in those 7 words, I wanted to give to you a lot of information. I wanted to bring into effect my relationship with students. I wanted to talk about a current first-year student. I wanted to give you her name, so there's a little bit of a detail there. And I wanted to tie it into a piece of the curriculum here at the GSB. So I had a lot that was going on just in those few words. As you look at Mark Betzos's clip, actually, we're going to come to that. Oh, we're going to come to that one in just a minute. What were his first words? Do you remember? Fire. Close. I actually may have to watch it again to see. But I think it was, as a volunteer fireman, you want to get there first. It was something along those lines. Because he was talking about the race between him and the other guy to get the assignment there first. I've not watched his clip enough to have it memorized. But think about your own first words. What are the worst first words that you can use in a presentation?
My name is JD.
Particularly if your name's not JD. Really bad choice, Martha.
What I'd like to talk to you about.
Yeah. Hi, I'm here today to talk to you about. Hi, my name is JD. I'm here today because. And what happens is, particularly in professional settings, there's a slide that says JD Schramm behind you. There's an introducer who says, today we have with us JD Schramm, and then I get up and say, hi, my name is JD Schramm. Use those first words valuably and think about, and maybe you want to say them multiple times. Maybe they become like a mantra or a chorus inside of your presentation. But think them through. With my students that I lead orientations and introductions to, I often begin with this phrase. I believe you can achieve mastery at anything you set your mind to in the next 2 years while you're here at the GSB. And then I go into defining what mastery means, what 2 years looks like, and how they can achieve it. So thinking through first words.
Question?
Yes, please. It is it Val or Val?
Val or Valerie or...
Val, okay.
Yeah.
I had a 50-50. Yes, Val.
So will we be introduced so we don't need to introduce ourselves in this 4 minutes?
Just to be determined, I will let you know. I'm not sure.
Okay, because if nobody introduced us, I'm going to say, I'm Val Carpenter, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Los Altos, and then go into my speech.
So you might think about it a little bit. You could actually begin with a little bit of the story. A voter came to me and she was so incredibly upset because of da-da-da. I'm Val Carpenter, I'm the mayor of, and this is what... So you may be able to just flip it barely and still start with something that catches them off guard. And we'll find out logistically what it looks like. The other piece, when you're in other settings, we often print the whole bio of somebody in the program, or it's sent out in the invitation, it's available on the website, and then the person who does the introduction just reads what we are. What a waste of an opportunity. If you're doing an introduction, somewhere other than in the PMP thing, find out something that's not in the printed bio. Find a story, find an anecdote, find something that lets you actually serve the purpose, not just read what we read while we're waiting for you to begin. Okay, third one. Follow Goldilocks. Anybody with children remember? Anybody remember what the Goldilocks theory is? Jenna, you got to have a shot at this. You've got 3 of them at home.
Trying a lot of different things till you find one that fits.
Close, very close. Because every part of the Goldilocks story, there's something that's too hard, there's something that's too soft, there's something that's just right. Something that's too big, something that's too small, something that's just right. When we look at details in our story, we want to have just the right amount of details. Had Mark gone on and on and on about the color of the truck and the address and the street, and it would have ruined it for us. And where we felt there was just a little bit of a gap, we would like maybe a detail or 2 more. And that's really a nuance that you have to, how much do I share, how little do I share in terms of the details. And thinking through what are enough details that it's illustrative, but not so many that I bored people. The fourth one, and I thought Mark did this very well. Practice one person, one thought. And particularly on the day of the event in October, There will be a camera in the room like there is right now in the room here, but you're not speaking to the camera. You're having a conversation with individuals, and what you want to be able to do is deliver one complete thought to one person. Kind of have that moment. And then deliver another complete thought to another person. Actually have that moment, and then another thought somewhere else. There's a place, and if you watch Mark's video again on your own at home, there's a place where he's talking about different things that you can do that are small steps, and he delivers one to one-third of the audience, one to another third of the audience, one to another third of the audience. You can tell he's connecting with sections of the room. Not just like scattering across everywhere, or not just having one conversation with one person and leaving everybody else out in the loop, but actually practicing that eye contact. Eye contact is gold in storytelling, and the more that you're actually able to connect and pierce into somebody's eyes, the more that you bring down that resistance and the more that you make that connection. The fifth one, this will take a little bit of work here. Remember the magic grain track. So I grew up in Kansas, and my high school English teacher, David Westling, was one of my best educators. And he used to tell us, now I grew up in Hays, Kansas, and all the kids in my high school freshman English class were primarily farm boys. I was not. I was a city kid, if you can call a city, 13,000. But we all knew what a grain truck was. When we harvested in June, the grain truck came and they dumped all of the wheat out of the truck into the grain elevator, and that was what the farmer got paid. How much wheat was in the truck and what was the water content of the wheat that was in the truck. How valuable was the wheat that was in the truck. Mr. Westling said poetry is like a magic wheat truck. If there was a way to get 12 truckloads of wheat in one truck, how valuable would that be? I'm like, wow, that'd be pretty amazing. You only make one trip instead of 12 from the farm, and you make all that much money. That's what poetry is. It's the chance to put that much more weight into a few number of words that they carry that much more meaning. Now, I'm not asking that you become Shakespeare, but think through, is there word choices you can use that carry more of an impact than a whole bunch of words? For example, in Mark Betzos' talk, what did he call the other fireman?
Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor. 2 words. What does all of that conjure up when he says Lex Luthor?
The bad guy.
The bad guy, manipulative. One time he later used the word my nemesis. Okay? All of that comes through by calling the fireman Lex Luthor.
But funny and cartoonish, not calling him Hitler or something.
Exactly. That would have only been 1 word, but that would have, a whole different characterization out of that.
A little, he did. I know.
And so you want to be, and you also have to be careful. Like in some audiences, Lex Luthor would mean nothing. I was teaching undergrads last year, and I was trying to explain the term. I think I told this to the coaches last week. I was trying to explain the term Philistine. Somebody was being a real Philistine about something. I said, like Archie Bunker. No clue who I was talking about. None whatsoever. And, like Homer Simpson. Oh, God, now I know what you're talking about. So you have to be careful about that, but think about, is there some poetry I can use? Is there some imagery? Or maybe there's an analogy. Maybe there is a visual image. We talked earlier, Jack, about you've got some visual images, and sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. I can put one thing up, and it conveys a great deal of meaning. So think about what you can do in your 4 minutes that lets you get more out of a word or more out of a slide than just 1 word or 1 image. Anybody a musician in here? Yuri, is it?
Yeah.
Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
What do you play?
Guitar, French horn, saxophone.
Kind of a slacker, huh?
Yeah.
Do you read sheet music?
I do on saxophone.
Okay, and what is a rest in sheet music? What does that indicate?
Pause in the music, so it's for a certain amount of time. You basically measure it out and you stop playing.
And when somebody composes a piece of music, they decide in that moment, Yuri should stop playing the saxophone. That silence is going to actually be written into the composition. It's especially powerful when you see an entire symphony that goes silent for a moment. Because the composer has decided that is a time where the music is best represented by no notes at all. And so for us, the sixth strategy is to use silence. We can use silence to let people catch up to us. We can use silence to frame something. Like the first time we use a phrase or an acronym, we may say, here at the GSB, I may need to frame it a little bit. Or I can just use it because it allows me to get everybody's attention again. Those who are my age or older may remember an old TV commercial where they said, if you want to get somebody's attention, whisper. Want to get somebody's attention in a class or in a presentation? Go silent. People look up. Why did he stop talking? What's going on? What do I need to pay attention to now? And just a few seconds of silence, appropriately used, can add emphasis to your presentation. And the seventh strategy that I'm going to ask you to do is know your AIM. That's an acronym that we use. Actually, I've got enough people here that maybe anybody have Mary Munter when you were here at school? So this is something Mary Munter came up with. Mary Munter taught communication here at the GSB. She then went to the Tuck School at Dartmouth and is one of my mentors. And I use several of her books in my teaching. And it stands for Audience, Intent, and Message. Who is my audience? What do I want them to do as a result of this communication? What's my intent? What's my objective? And then how do I frame my message in that way? Getting back to Diego's question, you've got a lot of complicated information about that you want to be able to share about your entity, about your enterprise, about your startup. With a certain audience, you may share this information. With investors, you may share this. With partners, it may be this info. And so we decide, based on who our audience is, and what we want them to do with that information, how much we share. The best thing to happen, now this isn't a part of the PMP 4 Minutes of Fame, the best thing to happen, especially for entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders and people who are involved in causes, is to share a little bit and have them ask to hear more. And share a little bit and have them ask to hear more. You ever been at one of those cocktail parties here in Silicon Valley where somebody says, oh, let me tell you about my startup, and they just like launch onto you and they just keep going and you're like trying to get to the bar, you're trying to get away from them a little bit. As opposed to hooking them and saying enough that they want to engage in a conversation with you. So knowing your audience and what do you want them to do with the information. Now, can we take a moment here and is this appropriate to talk about the two possible branches that their presentations may go in? Can you explain that better than I can?
Sure. So I think when all of you volunteered to come forward and be speakers, at the time we were aiming for 18 people, and imagine we would have everyone in one room with a consolidated audience, maybe around 100, 150. We weren't really sure what to expect because this is the first time in a decade where we've pulled together the alumni community in this way. Since then, we have had almost 40 people come forward with interest. We actually had to shut off the accepting of new people, but in a spirit of really wanting to represent alumni we haven't heard from in a long time, not just those who are really plugged into the GSB community and folks who have a variety of stories. We're going to try and accommodate about 40 people and do 2 simultaneous rooms. We're figuring out exactly how it's going to work, and it may be where we all start together, listen to a number of kind of introductory talks, and then there becomes a side room where others are available. They may both be kind of 50-50 splits. But the theme that seems to be emerging is that some of you did come into this wanting to talk about your organization, and I originally had posed you, please click on the pitch, make this more a story about yourself. And it seems that there's kind of a natural interest of some people to make a little bit more of an explicit pitch, whether it be for investors or just action or engagement or volunteers. And so that's what we're looking at, is that, you know, there may be actually, for some of you who want to make it a little bit more of an explicit ask of some form, a place to do that, whereas others might have a little bit more of a kind of reflective story of impact. So regardless, these tools are useful to you, and this is something that as we're finalizing the list of speakers, I'll be getting back to you about. If as you hear this, you hear, you know, when you feel strongly that you belong in one place or the other, and you don't think it's self-evident, please let me know. But anyway, that's that, David. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer that.
Okay, I have a question. So will you sort of announce what these two categories of rooms are so the audience can choose which group they want to go to?
Good signage, and kind of in the program of the talk, it'll say, you know, this is the schedule, and say if you're 3 to 5 is what the schedule for the class notes live, and either there will be 2 room options for that period of time, and a kind of guide to what's in each space by thematic area, or if it ends up being this pitch, you know, maybe we all start in one space and then there's a reception or a break, and those who want to hear the more explicit pitches are able to shift to another space. It'll either be, you know, it'll be in the program, it'll be announced in advance, and then there'll be signage there that helps everybody know kind of where to be and when.
Just a little confused about what to talk about. I don't want to pitch anything, but I also, you know, I mean, it was the original point to just show different perspectives of folks who went through the PMP and how they now are reflecting years later on their various interactions with the public environment, or?
And you know, in your case, we talked a little bit about you having this kind of large kind of view from the top of social innovation as this emerging theme and kind of the field of social entrepreneurship. So I still think it makes sense for you and Anne-Marie probably to share your wisdom in more of the, you know, not pitch format, but we can talk about that
okay.
A little bit more, you know, kind of as you two talk to each other. She is a colleague who is also a GSB alum that will be talking as well, and kind of pair that together. So we can explore that and see what feels the most exciting to you. But I think that, you know, working with a fellow GSB alum is a really neat facet to your story, and then the fact that you've engaged other students in the work of your grantees, and there's a lot of fun things you can kind of explore together.
And as we look at the intent, whether you're in the first room or the second room, or you find yourself in another setting where you're talking about the things that you're up to, it's that measurement of, by sharing this information, what do I want the audience to do with it? And sometimes it's very explicit that I want to engage people as volunteers into my organization or as donors into my organization. Sometimes it's more that I want them to embrace the idea, or I want them to continue the conversation, or I want them to reach out to somebody else and reshare this information. So it's thinking that through. What do I want people to do as a result of it? We had Nancy Duarte speak here at the GSB last year, and she talked about that she believes in business there is no such thing as an informative presentation. Everything at some level is persuasive. Me spending these 2 hours with you, I want you to deploy these tactics when you deliver your presentation. I'm not just giving you information, I want you to practice it, I want you to do it. And so thinking through, what is it that I could get people to do as a result of this information? So those are my 7 habits of highly concise storytellers. But I thought a lot about the experience of being alumni. I think it's great for you to be able to come back to the GSB and hear from a faculty member, a distinguished and well-regarded faculty member. None of them were available tonight, and so I was able to come. But I thought what was actually more useful would be for you to be able to hear from students. Because often when you're back, you may get to interact with students, but it's rare that you get to go to a class. It's rare that you actually get more than kind of networking sorts of conversations with our students. So I brought some of our students into the workshop this evening to talk to you about their experience in storytelling. And what will happen is you will see some of my students on, let's see, I need the screen down. That's the lower arrow. In the class that I teach here at the GSB called Strategic Communication, and actually Mary is starting to teach Strategic Communication. Next Monday is the first class with her students. We do a final project that students do a 10 to 15 minute presentation to their peers about a specific communications topic, and they deliver it in class, but then we take the best of those lessons and we put them up on the web as a virtual library for other students to learn from on their tactics. And I had a group of students 2 years ago who did one on effective storytelling. So I'm going to show you just 3 minutes of their advice to us on storytelling. You may not be able to see their slides as well as I wish you could, but when I send you the link out, you'll be able to both watch the video and download their slides. So let's see what our GSB students tell us about storytelling.
To give you a preview of where we're going, we're first going to walk you through the basics of building a story. So what is the story? What's the structure of the story? How can it differ? And what are some tips and best practices that you can employ next time you want to build a story? Next, we're also going to do an exercise where we're all going to take a chance at writing our own mini stories. We're then going to give you some specific tools that you can use, some stories that you can put in your back pocket next time you want to actually employ storytelling in a presentation.
Alright, so I'm going to talk to you guys today about how do you build a story. What do you think about when you're going to tell a story? So, telling a story and giving a presentation happen to be very similar. You both have an introduction, a middle, and a conclusion. Now there are a few things that are different, however. In your presentation, you're going to tell people what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. In a story, you're going to have 3 different, distinct components, and they're each going to have a different goal. So we'll start with your introduction. Similar to a presentation, your introduction is going to be short, and you're going to want to drop the audience directly into the action. Really important. There are 2 other objectives that you're going to want to have for your introduction. The first, this is where you establish background information. You give the audience the information they're going to need in the context for understanding where the story is going. You're also going to establish the dramatic question. The dramatic question is, what does the protagonist want? What is his or her goals that they're striving towards during the story? Next is the middle component of the story. In the middle component, you have 3 other objectives. Firstly, you're going to develop the characters and the situation that you previously introduced in the beginning of your story. Next, you want your major action to happen in this part of the story. And lastly, you're going to introduce obstacles. And you want a bunch of obstacles, and you want them to be increasingly difficult, that the protagonist needs to bump into again and again, trying to get to his or her goal. Lastly, you're going to have a conclusion. Now this conclusion is going to be the shortest part of your story, but the most critical. Ideally, you want the last act of the conclusion to give the audience the most enjoyment in the climax and what happens. You're going to follow a 3C pattern in your conclusion: crisis, climax, and consequences. The crisis is the point of the most tension. That's going to happen here. The climax is when the crisis point ends and the tension is released. This is where the audience gets the answer to the dramatic question. Lastly, you're going to allude to the consequences that come as a result of this. Now, stories mostly have this template, but they can have very many different shapes. For instance, here's Casablanca. The story is a bit rocky, but always upward sloping to the end. And here's James Bond. Boom, pow at the beginning, then is boring, slowly but surely he gets the girl. Or you can have Jurassic Park, in which you have a series of crises that need to be resolved increasingly throughout the scene. Alright, so now you have...
Okay. So I liked the way that they use movies as a way to look at the template for stories. And the part of the information that they used in their 12-minute class on storytelling is drawn from Jennifer Ocker's class that she teaches here, actually right now during September session, on how to tell a story. And so they, some of the tips and some of the strategies that are in there are things that they drew from her class and then built into this presentation. And I will give you the link that you can watch all of that, as well as some other student presentations. But that short one, particularly on storytelling, I think is useful. But what I liked about it is the sense of obstacle, climax, and consequence. And as you think about your journey, whether it is as an entrepreneur, as an elected official, as somebody who's starting an entry, What are the obstacles that you have overcome? How did you overcome them? And where are you at now as a resolution? Now, I want you to also vary that. If all of you go out and do the exact same format, by the time we get to the end of 2 hours of those presentations, it will be kind of dull. There's another resource that I will encourage you to look at, and some of you heard me mention her name earlier, Nancy Duarte, who's the author of Resonate and also Slidology. She's here in the Valley. She comes and spends a lot of time here at the GSB with us, working with our students. She's the woman who did the PowerPoint slides for Inconvenient Truth. So she's the only one who's ever gotten an Oscar for PowerPoint slides. And in Resonate, she talks about that every presentation follows a... Sorry, folks on the video, you're not going to get this as well. But every story has where things begin, they get better, and then how things are. How they could be, how they are. How they could be, how they are. And in the book Resonate, she looks at everything from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. This is the way things are, this is the way they could be. This is the way things are, this is the way they could be. To Steve Jobs' introduction of the iPhone. This is the way things are, this is the way they could be. This is the way things are, this is the way they could be. And that sense of climax, that sense of obstacle and resolution is a major part of storytelling. And this book in particular, I think, is wonderful about how do you tell a story through a presentation. Her first book, Slidology, is more about how do you make the visuals look good. This is how do you make sure the story under it is effective. We are exactly where I wanted to be at 8 o'clock. Jack, are you ready for where we wanted to be at 8 o'clock? Okay. Jack is far enough along in his prep. Do you want to give me the disc and I can get it keyed up here? Jack is far enough along in his prep that he said he's willing to do part of his presentation and get a little bit of feedback from me, some coaching in terms of what could go differently, what's working, what could go differently. We don't expect that you will have incorporated everything that we have just talked about here. But this is great to do is just to be able to have a dry run at an audience that's a friendly audience.
So, according to E.O. Wilson, today's species are disappearing thousands of times faster than any time in history. And this loss is projected to increase to 10,000 times faster by the year 2050. Fourth loss is biodiversity loss. Humans are responsible for this. That means you and me. We hope our story inspires and engages you to stop this now. I do two things at once. 10 years ago, on a visit to Kangaroo Island, South Australia, Hillary, my wife, and I fell in love with the native black swans and the unique ecology. There we found an old neglected sheep and cattle farm, Cygnet Park. This is an aerial of the farm when we first bought it. All the ground you see was once a diverse forest ecology along a beautiful river. All we could imagine was grapes and olives as far as the eye could see. While driving the property, we found 15 acres of land that was dead, by commercial fertilizer buildup. Was there a solution? Locals saw this destruction as unavoidable farming. University scientists helped, and 3 years later, the 15 acres had tall grass, and a living ecology was again possible. It was our revelation of species extinction. So we did the unthinkable to our friends back in California and expanded our restoration to 800 acres and fundamentally changed our passion from wine and olive oil to investing and fighting for biodiversity. Our land allowed us to uncover the mysteries of native plant germination and cultivation that quickly attracted hundreds of people who shared our passion. No one will miss more bottles of wine and olive oil, but we'll all regret not helping stop this mass extinction. Our efforts spread, word spread, and the Australian nonprofit BioR was born with the encouragement of our friend Steve Snyder and his wife of the Wood Institute at Stanford, of course. With BioR, we focused on reimagine, restore, and reinvent biodiversity and new processes for finding and germinating native seeds. Our burning experiments germinated native seeds long thought extinct. More fields were prepared, experiments expanded, and we continued to bioreverse the extinction trend. Surprisingly, we became weed control experts. Our farm manager made Signet Park his PhD thesis, and data gathering efforts exploded in intensity and scale. Annually, 450 to 650 volunteers from 6 months old to 78 years old from 20 plus countries join our planting festivals. Our first summer fellow was Robin Pam, a Stanford grad. This year we had 100,000 seedlings for a total of 750,000 plantings since we started. In year one, our goal was 5,000 trees in our lifetime. We scaled further. Biodiversity warriors gathered and planted, got muddy, and battled some more. The trees and understory grew. We never missed the grapes or olives, but we celebrated both every year. Signet Park is 10 years into a 300-year path of biodiversity. 100 experiments in seed germination, 5 plants thought long extinct, 50 experiments on weed control have helped us to continue to reimagine new ways to slow extinction. The glossy black cockatoo, is one of the most endangered birds in the world. It eats only one seed in one species of tree in one location that is disappearing rapidly on Kangaroo Island. We have doubled the nesting pairs to 8, fighting back extinction. We want BioR to bioreplicate our passion for partnering with others in Australia and the rest of the world to restore habitats and save other animals like the glossy black. So get involved in understanding and reinvesting in biodiversity. We've learned that success comes from small things that at first seem unimportant, and then by thought and commitment become the big things that really do change the world. And in our case, that's one seed and one volunteer at a time.
Okay, thank you. Ken, did you begin new right when he started? Can you tell me the time we're at? Because I didn't run my stopwatch.
It started back over on my time code.
Oh, just now?
So I don't know.
Okay. So
I think it's a little over 4 minutes.
Yeah, it felt like a little bit long. Did somebody time it? Oh, okay, just barely over. 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Myself in the hall, it was 3 minutes and 50 seconds, but I know I was slowing down.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. So what worked well about what Jack did? Offer him some, this is the old plus deltas, what worked well, what could go differently. We'll start off with the compliments. What went well? Jenny?
It's very personal. You hear your personal story, and the baby carriage photo is great.
Priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes.
I like the photos. I thought that was great. And I think your tagline, save the seed was something about save the seed, save the world.
One seed, one volunteer at a time.
Yeah, one seed, one volunteer at a time. I thought that was great.
Yeah. And that was a really good place to end in terms of word choice. It might be more memorable if we hear it more than once. And so sometimes we want our tagline to be like a punchline, that we only get it there once.
Save the seed, save the world. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I like that.
So,
save the seed, one volunteer at a time, then it's like your method of, like, I'm missing the so what.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, good, good. Other things that worked well, yes?
I like how you came back to the wine and olive oil several times.
Yeah.
We provided a really nice connector through the story.
Yeah. And that was a big thing. All of our California friends thought we were crazy because they were expecting lots of wine and olive oil. Maybe.
Yeah. So, and the other piece I liked about what Ashley mentioned is that was a little bit of an obstacle. Mm-hmm. Like, well, but we came here to do this, but there's this bigger need out there. And so we saw a little bit of the climax back and forth in the story. Yes?
The growth and the scale of the effort astounded me. How we could gear up that fast.
It astounded me.
And what's left yet to do. Man, the line, we are 10 years in to a 300-year experiment. Wow, you get the audacity of what it is that you're up to, Jack. Very well-chosen language. As we look at some of the lines that people are remembering, you've worked a lot in terms of the scripting of that, the poetry, if you will, of that. Yes, Diego.
Discussing the specific species helped a lot in driving home the biodiversity, because when it was just the plantings, it was kind of like, okay, great, but by actually discussing a specific personal story of a species that really does rely on that, it drove home the point of biodiversity.
But, yeah, the hard part for me was that the thing we've actually done the most interesting thing is finding plants that no one's seen for over 80 years.
Mm.
But when I say it's blah, 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 California, no one cares. But as soon as you say glossy black cockatoo and you see an animal, everybody loves that. So that was a choice I made.
That's true too, though, and everybody loves it so much. I wondered why it wasn't right at the beginning, because I thought the glossy black
cockatoo
was so compelling that if you had a better photo, that tells your entire story to start with, as opposed to starting with numbers.
Good point.
You start with that and say, this one bird eats one seed from one tree, and in order to get there, we have to improve and then you're already telling your story that's leading to it.
More concise.
And
Diego?
if you really want to focus on the plantings, you could do something personal with that, where you could find some artifact made out of some plant that is no longer available. Say, this hasn't been able to be made for so long because of the lack of this. And so suddenly I care about that plant. It's not just some random weed that I want to pull out of my garden. Anyway.
A couple other things that I just want to emphasize, and we'll look at how we could tweak this. It's already very solid, but our commitment is to help you even make it better. He used some phrases like surprisingly, did the unthinkable. And it brought up that sense of the enormity of the task that you and your wife are committed to and what you're doing. Also ended with a clear call to action. It wasn't as overt as, volunteer, write a check, but it was get involved, and I thought that was really useful in terms of that. What do you, in the spirit of supporting Jack, what do you think he could have done differently? We already got a few points in terms of some of the language. Anything else you would encourage him to look at between now and the 20th of October? Diego?
I felt that there were times you could have tightened up the expansiveness of what you're doing. You used a lot of words and statistics, but if you could just synthesize that in one or two, the size of this many football, something that really just drives it home, but isn't just numbers. Some facts that make it more, that kind of synthesize it better, that would have had more power than just regurgitating facts. There was parts of it I felt it was just a regurgitation of numbers, which were impressive in and of themselves, but something more tangible would have given them more power.
Is there something you can think of that for you was compelling in terms of the statistics, Jack?
Just the sheer number of experiments we had we got the Wood Institute interested in us is that we had a meeting with the Wood Institute where 7 of the 9 people on the board have all been on our farm in the last year and a half. I didn't know about it. And so, because they're looking at Kangaroo Island is a canary for Australia, which is a canary for the rest of the world, because it's a rock. So for a lot of this biodiversity stuff, a lot of it's happening. So trying to figure out how to make an image around those numbers, Diego, that's an interesting struggle.
So you can add really interesting what you just said.
Yeah.
That island is the canary for Australia. That's an image right there.
Yeah.
That works really well.
So that's the hope, right? I mean, it's imagine a world where it's all devastated. Now imagine this island, which is a precursor to the others. We can actually fix this, and this is how you do it.
And when you're using the phrase canary, you're referring to the canary in the mine, right? Okay. And because there also is the Canary Islands, and I got just a little lost for a second there, going, what?
Canaries and parakeets on this island like pigeons are here.
But possibly a visual. I love the photos, but possibly a visual that's the map that lets you tell that story. That this is the canary to Australia, which is
So the graph showing the extinction rate isn't that compelling.
I like that idea of starting with the bird.
I have a great
That
picture of
just-
lots of luck.
People gaze over, and then it's also, well, why do I care about biodiversity?
Yeah.
I mean, you show me that number, but it doesn't, how does that relate to me?
Yeah. Okay, yes?
I like the initial shot of the land with it being barren. I wonder if you can get a shot of it now.
In the original, I mean, again, this is
4 minutes.
The original is 20 slides, and it ended up being like 20 minutes, and you keep hacking away. You know, at first I didn't mention my wife. She said, "Well, you have to mention me." So, so no, we have another picture that shows. It's not in 300 years it'll be all green, but right now it just shows all the rows and all the plankton happening. So it's actually visually you can't see it.
Yeah. Good.
So kind of related, sorry, to
Go ahead, Carol.
point about the statistics. I'm wondering if you can use some silence, because I think there's a lot of power in the information, but you were going really fast, and I kind of wanted you to slow down a little bit so I could absorb some of that. So I think if there's a way to...
I was a little nervous and
and
I could use both my hands. Otherwise
and what we're going to do in a minute here is just have you go off script and have you do some of that beginning again without needing to hold the laptop, and I'll advance the slides for you so you can practice, you know, some of that in that particular moment. One of the one of the strategies along that line that I want to work with you on, if you're comfortable doing movement, a great strategy at the beginning is to take 1 or 2 steps towards your audience. So when I began this afternoon, or earlier this evening, I began by, Caroline was in my cat class the first time I met her. And I actually took a couple of steps, and I chose, even though Val and I weren't connected yet, I chose to connect with Val and walk towards her in that moment. If that's something, once you're off script, that you're comfortable doing, that the subtext is, I'm bringing you something. I have a message for you and a gift that I'm bringing to you. Even in a situation where you can't move, sometimes you're delivering a presentation and you're behind a podium and you're mic'd and you have to be there. Even to just begin and take a moment into the audience that lets you connect with them, or in a business meeting to lean forward in your chair as you make a point, all of that is kind of the nonverbal communication of I'm bringing something to you. And I think we can work on that a little bit at the very top in terms of connecting with your audience. And then the other place I'd like to work non-verbally, if we can like stop and start you a little bit, is you make a very clear contrast between wine and oil and sustainable farming. I forget the exact language there. And one of the things that we can do visually when we're delivering a presentation is you always make wine and olives in one place and sustainable environment in another place. And if you get used to that, what you're leaving, what you're putting behind is one direction, and what you're moving towards is another, it gives you that visual of the future that we're moving to and what we're leaving behind. Exactly. And it also gives you something. So people are always saying, what do I do with my hands when I'm up there? I don't know what to do with my hands. And that's one place where I can easily use gestures, and it's natural. It's comfortable in that. Jenny?
Does it have to be a work? Did wine and olive oil have to be your vanity?
And they weren't. It's just we don't have to make the farm about wine and oil. Wine and oil is still a big part of our celebration and our life. And it wasn't what this farm ended up being.
Because the problem is, you're like, we could have done this, but it ruins the land. So we do this, but we still celebrate with it. So someone else is ruining your land elsewhere, but we're not. Yeah. Like, I didn't quite follow your story. And I guess if it was, there's lots of things that sort of kill biodiversity. And are you making the point that sort of bringing in species that don't belong somewhere in life, is it literally?
No, the dichotomy was we initially were going to do grapes and olive oil as far for all without 800 acres, and instead we decided to do biodiversity on it.
Because you care more about it, not because the grapes are going to.
Just because we care more about it.
I think that's the personal dilemma that I didn't get.
Okay.
You know, that here is land that for very important reasons is a bellwether for lots of other issues, and it is dead. And we made a choice. We love wine and oil,
with all of our hearts, and we made this very crazy choice to give that up, our retirement, to do biodiversity, and I've never been so happy.
And so what I had was, we did the unthinkable to our friends back in California, expanded our restoration to 800 acres, not just 15 acres. And
Too many numbers. I don't know if I like so many numbers.
And we fundamentally changed our passion from wine and olive oil to investing in fighting for biodiversity.
So I would use like a ratio. We quadrupled or we quintupled. You know, we.
Oh, that's helpful. Yeah, make the statistics.
Kind of, what do they mean for me? You know
yeah.
What I mean? But if you say we double down, it's like, wow, okay, I get it.
That's personal passion.
So good. Okay, I'm gonna take 2 more points, and then we're gonna let him breathe a little bit. This is Carol Robin always says, feedback is a gift. You're getting lots of gifts right now. Amanda and then Ashley.
I just want to build a little bit on Jenny's comment. You know, Jack, when I talked to you in the longer version of your story, the way that you talked about, you know, your original kind of dreams of retirement, traveling to Tuscany, like you don't ever say explicitly, we were dreaming of taking our dream of retirement, you know, and the food of the cuisine of Italy, which was our love, and like making that happen in kangaroo, you know, in Australia, this farm that we purchased. You don't see it explicitly enough, I don't think, for us to understand, oh, that's what they were doing there. They were, you know, they were chasing this dream of retirement, a comfy retirement with delicious food and, you know, and then they found themselves on this scorched earth and like, this is the way it changed her. So I think you could just, you know, more explicitly say, this is the stage we were in our life and, you know, the way that we came to this. And the other thing that could be really powerful at your conclusion would be to say, you know, this was, my career path was X. Like, I was not a volunteer with the Nature Conservancy. I was not a, you know.
Well, what's your career path?
You know.
The joke is a karma kickback because I'm a real estate developer. So.
It's so funny. It's fantastic because what it would do for
That's
the
brilliant.
All these people who are at some stage in their lives going, you know, I'm kind of interested in this. It's like, be open to what's ahead for you and, you know, the twist that your plan can take. And it's because you don't name it. I just think if you have a place to stick that in there, it'd be really powerful.
And we had it in originally, but we cut it back, and my wife said, if we have it 4 minutes, let's at least make this biodiversity plea. It's not a plea for bio-art, it's just about it for anybody.
Right.
And that comes through really loud and clear.
Yeah.
And you can still do it, especially moving the bird forward and condensing some of the
4 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah. So the and what I'm hearing in that, as you think through your own story, I love Jenny said earlier, not sure exactly what I'm going to talk about and how this is going to fit in. Hopefully this conversation tonight helps you kind of see that it's your journey. And so with Bruce from the class of 55 or Yuri from the class of 08 and everything in between, everyone in between, your journey is really a part of what this PMP 40th anniversary is about. Absolutely. And so having all of these multiple paths that end up making a difference and making an impact, that's meaty. That's like our own little TED conference here. Ashley, you had a comment. I want to make sure I get it in. Okay, good.
I would say, Jack, it's more impactful to me listening to you that you made that choice.
No, I hear that.
Rather than, you don't have to convince me biodiversity is important. What's important is that you, smart guy,
Actually, I'm going to disagree with this because you missed what journalists call the nut graph, which is the aha moment. This is biodiversity. This is what it means. Because you're going to have people who don't get it. And if you lead them through your moment of revelation, they'll get it too. They'll catch the infection.
Right.
So that transition from what you were going to do to what you were doing is currently missing. The nut of the heart of the Carrizo really is still being written, I think.
Does that resonate for you?
Oh, very much. But I gotta get it into 4 minutes.
Yeah, and that's
too slow.
But you can think about how you could put that together. I mean, you could say, "This is the bird that ruined my dreams of a Tuscan." You know,
you're exactly right.
So, and then you start from there, and people are like, "Wait a minute, what's going on here?" You know, and then suddenly you've got everybody hooked. And
This is the time to set my dream in flight.
Yeah, you know.
Because this is really a good dream, like knocking all of.
Or derail, you know, change my dreams from, you know.
So that's a better dropping point too.
Yeah, lets you parachute in at that moment. Okay, so I'm going to actually pause that and at the very end let you come up for one last moment. Okay. But we're going to pick on Diego for a while. Okay, so Diego, you ready?
I came completely unprepared for this, but I'll give it a try. And, you know, since I
Thank you.
violated
Nope, stay there.
our
I'm gonna
5 to 7 rules, I've been changing things on the fly. Do you think we could can I plug this in?
Absolutely.
I got this, this is a presentation. I'm just gonna, can I try plugging it directly in off of this?
Oh my God, I thought it was a book. That is so cool. It depends on the dongle connection.
I've got this. I've got one of these. Okay, so this is going to get off to a rocky start because I changed my intro since I was violating rule number, I don't remember what, at the beginning. So so here goes. I've never practiced this, but I'll give it a try.
So I'm gonna pause you there.
Okay.
And
all right.
Preface is out of the way. We've all got it.
I've been introduced.
And first moment.
Okay. A few years ago, my oldest daughter told me she hated math. It was bad enough that this fell into stereotypes for girls. But I also wondered if it was part of a greater problem in teaching math and sciences in the United States. And it made me wonder, why were kids as engaged and excited about math and science as I was growing up? All right, well, I didn't have this kit, but it would have been really cool. You know, if anything, kids these days should be more excited, given the amazing tools they have at their disposal. So I started thinking about what I liked as a child and what engaged me. And I remembered the high frame rate movies of Doc Egerton from MIT, which stopped time. And I remembered the Powers of 10 video and how it opened up the wonders of the universe and microscopic worlds in a beautifully elegant and concise 10 minutes. And then I went online. And I found these videos, and I found other videos, like the video of the Tacoma Narrows that I remembered from physics class. And then something surprising happened. I started discovering a new generation of these videos and stories out there. And I realized the internet was enabling hundreds of thousands of people passionate in math and science to share their passion in innovative, exciting, and yes, quirky ways. There were researchers in New Zealand teaching computer science concepts without computers. There were PhD students in Detroit teaching neuroscience with do-it-yourself kits. There were contests encouraging PhD students to dance their theses. And there were physics students deconstructing the physical impossibilities of My Little Pony. And I started to collect these stories in websites, and I realized I needed a place to store them. So I remembered another story that grabbed my interest as a youth. Schrodinger's cat. It was a thought experiment that Schrodinger used to explain the concept of quantum entanglement. And in the story, the cat was both alive and dead at the same time. So that gave me the idea for a fun and engaging website name, where people could come together to share their favorite math and science stories, images, videos, and websites. So I set up this website and started talking to educators and parents and scientists in the broader community and found an amazing desire and need for simple tools to engage students. And I found a lot of people surprised that there was so much already out there. I soon realized I'd also stumbled upon the perfect medium to connect with this new generation of learners, and that zombiecat.org could leverage this new explosion of social media tools. So I incorporate ZombieCat as a nonprofit, and I'm looking for help to launch and develop, for its launch, development, and upkeep. You see, I don't know with certainty if Hungarian dance is the best way to teach sorting algorithms. But after working on this for the last 9 months, I do know that there's a pony in there somewhere.
So, before we give you feedback, the gift of feedback, can you just go ahead and set the script down for a minute?
Sure.
And give us the elevator pitch. Give us the 30-second summary of why this is important to you And don't worry about the slides or the script. Just connect with the 18, 20 of us in the room. Why does this matter, Diego?
Zombie Cat has become a window for me into the broader challenges of math and science teaching, but also has created a bridge between the two worlds of education and those rest of us, that are passionate about math and science. There are about 300,000 or 400,000 math and science teachers in K through 12, and there are millions and millions of people who graduated and work in math and science. And I found that this little snippets of videos that are engaging and fun create an intersection where both worlds like to live and both worlds can communicate. And I find this as a neat little beachhead into the community. So.
Do you see the difference? Just the eye contact, the connectedness. You know all this stuff really well, and your passion just is palpable, and that connection is very rich. You at this point, I want to ask you questions. I want to keep engaged, and I want to learn more about it. Mm-hmm. And so the reason I wanted to do that is just for all of you, the words are important, but it's really the connection with people. That's ultimately what really matters and what you want to strive for. Yes?
There's a genuine softness to your emotions that starts to happen that's very engaging.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. So both with this and what he delivered at the beginning, what was particularly effective about Diego? What moved you the most?
Well, I love the visuals. Again, although quirky, cartoonish, I thought they were very interesting.
Yeah. I know the episode from WKRP in Cincinnati. You didn't talk about that one, but I was like, oh, I know that one.
I like your connection to your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was expecting her to resurface somewhere.
Well, I just added her right now, so I'll work her in later. I'd originally introduced myself.
Bernie has a good question. Do you actually have a daughter?
Does it matter?
Yeah, I would agree. I like that.
On that, so you had a connection to your daughter, and then you sort of went macro and said, here's how the U.S. stands globally. I thought that was really powerful, because certain things resonate with different types of people. So
yeah.
Sort of very, very particular and very macro. Yeah.
Good mix.
So finish with your daughter. Some
joke that she says, now she's quoting the blah, blah, blah physics guy, or...
Yeah.
Says, if you have
And I love, if you go back one slide, I think it says, insert call to action here.
Well, I didn't have slides when I showed up here today. I did those during the last presentation. So yes, call to action slide, yes. That's the Hungarian dance.
I love that one.
Yeah.
They really do it.
And actually, since he is still very formative in terms of content, I think telling him what resonates is helpful. Was there anything that didn't resonate? Was there anything that lost you or threw you that, as he's deciding what to include and what not to include? Any thoughts on that for him?
Well, so the piece about the stats on the U.S. and where we are, I get that. What I didn't get was how this organization will impact that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, short answer is I have 4 minutes, but really this is about engaging. I mean, I'm looking at a very small piece of the whole teaching equation, which is how do I engage? How do I get somebody excited? And then throw them over the fence. I mean, I sometimes refer to the content in Zombie Cat as like a prop room for teachers, where I'm not giving lesson plans, I'm not giving full story, I'm not telling you how to teach something, but I want you to give that hook. It's like the jokes or the quotes you would use in a speech, but in teaching, how would you engage? And that's really, I mean, if you think about the Tacoma Narrows video, that was what a physics teacher, that's like the one thing they had to try to make this stuff interesting to you. It's like, watch, look at this bridge, it fell, now listen to me. And it was, and here's a video of it. I mean, how often do you see a video of a bridge start shaking and fall? So it's the idea that it's not going to solve the problem. I don't pretend it will, but it's a small little nugget that starts to put a wedge into the problem, and it works from many levels.
So that's what I want
to
hear.
Yeah. And another thing I noticed, just naturally, Diego, you have a real gift for language which is visual. You, a few minutes ago when I said put the script down and just tell us the story, you talked about wanting to be a bridge. And just now when you were answering Carol's question, you said, I imagine that it's a prop room for teachers. Like, just in those four, can you imagine as a teacher if you had a whole video library that you could pull from to use in that regard? And those naturally come to you, and so embedding some of those in your presentation, I think, would make it rich. Now I know that you did your slides while I was teaching. There may be a useful video clip. There may be.
No, I would have liked to. I would like to do this, some video clips and things like the Powers of 10 video. I mean, a lot of these videos, even if it's just a snippet, you get a lot more out of them watching them. And they're all videos. They're also YouTube videos, which I wasn't going to set up right now and kind of cross my fingers I could get the web to work. You know, I mean, I'd have to have that all embedded deep in here.
Yeah.
But you know, it would. I think the idea would be to actually almost have the presentation a video running behind the narrative, and hopefully sync it up a little bit, you know, and get good enough at syncing it.
And I would urge just a couple of morsels that draw us in, that get it, that tease us, that make us want to go to your website, that make people write down the website on their notes so that they go visit it, and probably a couple of places where you go to a black screen, it's just you in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want you to diminish what you bring to the room by too many visual images behind you. So tease us a little bit with it, but then also your passion as a parent and as an educator really is
There's people in this room who don't even believe I have children.
Yeah, well, there
And I'm not going to answer that question. I'm just going to leave it out there.
Well, one thing you did that was risky, but I think paid off, is that you were talking to us as someone with inside knowledge, and you didn't explain too much. When you brought up the cat thing, I don't know what that is, but it was okay because it was like a teaser. This is the expertise I have, and this is what you will get or you will learn. Yeah. I thought that worked, and I thought it was risky. I thought it worked.
And speaking in a way that you speak just above where your audience is, and they reach up to it. And I don't think I would have caught that, but I also didn't know the complete analogy. It didn't bother me. Right. Because I trusted that he did.
I don't understand quantum entanglement. I just think it's a cool story. No, but I mean, it's, yeah.
I just want to see those people dancing.
Go to zombiecat.org.
Great call to action. All right, thank you, Diego. Awesome. Mary, remember last year or 2 years ago at the beginning of CAT training, and I needed a big book like that?
That's right.
If I would have only known, I'd have called you. Okay, I need just a moment to get my next video ready here. What we're going to do at this point is I'm going to take questions. We're at perfect time for where I wanted to be. And what do we need to say, Amanda, about follow-up coaching?
So at the end of this, we should have this link to the video up by the end of the week, and at that point, I'm hoping that I'll be able to send out some form of like Google document or place where there's a centralized spot to kind of express your interest in having one-on-one feedback if you would like that. And we would be able to at that point know, JD, which of your coaches are available, and I'll continue to be available as well to talk through ideas and incorporate some of the pointers here in reviewing or reviewing as well. But tonight we won't worry about it. It'll just be something to watch for at the end of the week.
And I think as we look at that, part of the value is having a couple other people in the room that can provide that feedback. And so we might look at designing something that lets people come in small groups, 2s or 3s, that also lets them network a little more with alumni. We hadn't thought that through exactly. But and what I will, as we look at that coaching moment, one of the beauties I have here at the GSB is I not only get to teach communications classes, but I also lead a team of about 35 professional coaches that we bring in to coach our MBA students to work with them on oral presentations. The coaches who are here with us this evening were hired originally as writing coaches and are bridging into oral presentation. We thought this was a great way for them to get a sense of what it looks like in the room. But we also have a number of people that coach teams here in the Valley, that do media training. And so if it's not me working with you, it'll be somebody else that I have vetted in a small group where you actually get to come in and try something, get some feedback, but also have a professional coach who's working with you on that. And we're excited about putting a schedule together that'll create that. Before we go to the last video, questions that you have on either the content that I have delivered, the logistics of the event as a part of homecoming, anything we can answer that's burning for you. Yuri?
Question, you mentioned earlier, this technique where you sort of go through highs and lows, where they could be, where things are. How does it actually work in a speech? Is it sort of literal? Like, here's the world we see today, here's how it could be, and kind of come back to it. How does that work without sort of making it too obvious?
Definitely that's coming directly from Nancy Duarte's work in Resonate, and a lot of it is in the language that you choose. I'll give the example of the I Have a Dream speech as he talks about the way things could be and the way things are in an entrepreneur's pitch. Part of the challenge for an entrepreneur is to explain that there is a pain point for which you have the solution, which is your product. And so I was working with a group of entrepreneurs in the biodesign class in the spring, and they were solving sleep apnea, and they had a device that was better than going through surgery, which is what people have to go through if they struggle with snoring and sleep apnea. And they put a visual up. They had a visual of what this device that's currently on the market is, and it's like, if you can imagine sleeping with, if I may use this for a minute, sleeping with something like this strapped to your forehead, and you have to sleep with your back down. And they showed a photo of what that looked like, and then, I almost gave your bird back to the wrong person. And then they showed their device, and it was something that was smaller than this, and and so they showed the pain, they showed the way things could be, they showed the difficulty, they showed the way they could be. They had another slide later on where they looked at the number of people who go through surgery and the risks of surgery, and that theirs was non-invasive. So those are kind of some of the techniques that are there. And I would encourage you to look through her book because she's really good at illustrating that sort of contrast back and forth. Jack?
Do you try and get this so that you have a pitch, or do you sort of have little snippets you piece together? Because when you became more off-record, everything got more comfortable and relaxed. So in your mind, do you have 15 little modules you're playing with that you're sort of moving around, or do you really get your set 4-minute pitch that you just polish? Or all day.
It's a little bit of all of the above. What I would encourage is, especially because the 4 minutes is a hard and fast time, when I have done speeches that had to have that sharp of it, is I get it to where I know the major elements of what I'm going to say. I don't memorize. I don't go from pure manuscript, which you were working off of. In fact, if you look at my notes for tonight, can I borrow? You've got it right there. My notes for tonight, the story that I told was just that set of bullets. But I rehearsed it enough in my head. I knew it was right around 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes long. I added a few more details, but I wanted it to be under 3. But I would read that over and over and over again because muscle memory kicks in, and I remember that. But if you go to memorization, then you're memorizing word for word, and when you forget, you're just nowhere, And so having the bullets is easier than that. But because the 4 minutes is kind of a hard and fast rule, I do think you have to work to knowing what are the major bits that I'm going to deliver. Okay? Yes, Val?
What's the